I will call this Tigard City Council meeting to order. City Recorder Krieger, please call roll.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Youth Councilor Bogle.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Councilor Singh.
Here.
Councilor Wolf.
Here. Thank you. If everyone will stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. I would like to start with, tonight I want to honor Sean Alderman, who is an important member of our Tigard community who passed away recently in the last couple of days. If you don't know, Sean worked in the Tigard Tualatin School District for 30 years, and he coached the Tigard boys basketball team for 25 of those years. With that, he obviously made a huge impact on our community and the students at TTSD who interacted with him. I want to extend my condolences to Sean's family, friends, and all of the community members who will remember him. Please join me in a moment of silence, remembering and honoring Sean. Thank you. I also would really love to take a moment to talk a little bit about houselessness in Tigard, which I believe is probably a reason most of you are here today in the chambers. Welcome if it's your first time here. Last week there were 2 community discussions that were focused on ways that we can support those experiencing houselessness. Specifically, a church and a nonprofit service provider brought our community together to discuss what providing shelter could look like. Leaders of the church discussed that they're exploring it to provide safe parking for up to 3 vehicles. This would provide a safer setting for those experiencing houselessness and living in their cars while also having consistent access to services. It's an approach that many cities around the state and the country have taken and have had success with this model. The crisis of houselessness in our community means we need to explore new ways to support our neighbors. We need to understand what works, what doesn't, in providing people safe shelter and helping them transition into permanent housing. I want to be clear, I don't believe anyone in Tigard should be in a situation living out of their cars. Everyone deserves the dignity of a safe home and a roof over their heads. A vehicle is not a home. But this is where we are right now, trying to meet people where they are while working to expand the shelter capacity and affordable housing options. Last week was an initial discussion, the first of many, and about a potential step that our community could take. It was a conversation to listen and learn. I also want to be clear, no decisions have been made, no contracts have been signed, no permits have been applied for, none have been issued. I recognize these are incredibly difficult conversations, especially when they come to our homes and our communities. There are absolutely legitimate questions and concerns about the program, and we want to ensure that any program that moves forward is meeting the needs of all members of the Tigard community. Our city and our community have to make some difficult decisions, and I promise you one thing, not everyone is going to agree on the correct path forward. Unfortunately, last week, when the pastor and the nonprofit executive director opened their doors to start that conversation, they were met with not just disagreement, but insults and attacks. It escalated to members of the church being harassed and their safety compromised. Here in Tigard, there is no place for that bullying, threats, and intimidation we saw last week. We can and we must do better. You know, when you come into our community, there's a sign that says, "Welcome to Tigard, a place to call home." And we mean it for everybody in this room and everybody in our community. We see you, we welcome you, and we respect you. We're here to support you, all 56,000 people, and growing. We all deserve to be welcome, seen, and respected. Thank you. I want to call and see if there is any non-agenda items for City Council or city teammates.
None from us, Mayor. Thank you.
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to proclamations and recognition. So we do have a proclamation today, which is proclaiming February 2024 as Black History Month. So every February, the U.S. honors the contributions and sacrifices of African Americans who have helped shape our nation. Black History Month celebrates the rich cultural heritage, triumphs, and adversities that are an important part of our country's history. So you can read a copy of the proclamation online, and there's normally one that is posted out in the hallway if you want to read that. We will move on to public comment. If you would like to call now to get in the queue, please do so. That phone number is 503-966-4101. And anyone wishing to give those general comments, please do so to call into the queue. So I want to start by reading. There's a lot of me reading. I'm going to take a sip of water today. The protocol for public comments, just so everyone understands the rules around public comments for this meeting. They are up above, so if you wanted to read along, you can. The first are remarks to council as a whole during comments and hearings. Remarks should be addressed to the council as a body rather than directed to any particular member. A question may only be asked of a council member with the permission of a mayor or a presiding officer. I will add that public comment is not a conversation topic. It is an opportunity for anyone in the public to come to us and let us know about an issue that you're concerned about, and we will follow up directly with you, either by city teammates or a member of the council to answer your question or concerns. Respectful and courteous input at public comments and hearings. The council's intent is to be welcoming and inclusive towards all speakers at public meetings, and to create an atmosphere of mutual care and respect. Council meetings often provide an opportunity to provide public input and for community members to share thoughts and opinions with their elected leaders. Personal attacks or threats, disruption of the meeting, use of obscene, vulgar, or discriminatory language in any way discouraging anyone else from participating are not acceptable. While community members may disagree with each other or on city issues and give critical feedback, they're expected to do so respectfully and in accordance with these rules. Disruption at public meetings. The mayor or presiding officer may interrupt members of the public speaking to council if they are engaging in personal attacks, attacks on identity for gender, race, sexuality, or other discriminatory comments, engaging in accusatory, insulting, offensive, or harmful behavior that disrupts the council meeting, or not speaking on the subject matter of a public hearing. Any member of the audience who disrupts a council meeting may be asked to stop, and if it continues, you may be excluded from the meeting or muted if you're virtual, by the mayor or presiding officer if necessary to maintain order of this meeting. Violations of this rule may be stopped immediately, particularly related to the discriminatory or racist comments. Such disruptions will be addressed as efficiently as possible. We will give you warnings. If you continue, you will be escorted and asked to leave. Viewpoint neutral. The mayor and council will enforce these rules uniformly and treat all perspectives and opinions consistently. I know there's a lot of you here tonight, and we do have a lot of business. So it is our plan to allow 30 minutes for public comment. When you came in, there is a for and against option for those. And so we want to make sure that there's equal time for both sides to speak. So we'll be allowing 30 minutes total, so 15 minutes for each side and 1 minute per person speaking. So 15 people on each side can speak. Let's see. Mr. Vang, do you know if there are any callers in the queue?
There is currently one call in the queue.
Okay. Are you able to find out if that individual is for or against?
The caller is in support.
In support, okay. So we will start with follow-up to previous public comment with Assistant City Manager Nyland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I will make this brief because you have a full room and a full agenda. At the January 23rd council meeting, we received 2 written public comments. The first comment was about Steve Street Park. The community member did receive a response from our team letting them know about the intergovernmental agreement with Metro and next steps regarding final design, permitting, and construction. The second response was about the proposed charter amendment, suggesting edits, including who is eligible to vote. That community member also received a response from the city. Thank you for your time, and that is my report for this evening.
Thank you. We will move on to written public comment. We did receive many comments by noon yesterday. There were 61 comments in total. We had one person concerned about beavers and Dairy Dell Creek, one person for fireworks, and 59 individuals for safe lots. We don't have the breakdown of for or against, but 59 individuals. All of those individuals will be receiving a follow-up email from the city. We will move on to in-person public comment. If you have not signed up, there is a sign-up sheet sort of at the front of the room. Please do so, and please make sure to mark for, against, or neutral. We do have some neutral people, so we will also allocate 15 minutes at 1 minute a person for neutral. And we will start with Marspin Smith. Come on up. We do have a timer system that's right in the front. It is green when you have 1 minute, yellow when it's 30 seconds, and red when you are out of time. Please come up and make sure the microphone is on. You will have to press it for it to turn green. You can pick whichever seat you'd like. Welcome.
Green? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, my name is Martin Smith, and thank you very much for letting me talk, and I've got to be fast because I've only got a minute. Generally speaking, I would say that, I would just caution the city council about the consent agenda because, for example, we're facing the big problem with the homeless parking lot, or whatever they call that. And if it's just simply and slid over and it's in a consent agenda, then every one of you guys will be deemed supporting it if it passes. So I'm saying essentially, please have a specific vote on this because I mean again, it's what's important to you guys. I see we have a agenda item on the fireworks and an agenda item on drones. Well, at least you ought to talk about something that impacts the livability of this community. And that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. I did forget to add, I will ask all of you to refrain from clapping or cheering. We are watching you, so if there's something said that you agree with, please raise your hand so we can see and make note of your comments. We will move on to 15 minutes for against, and we'll start with Ann Van Gordon. Welcome, Ann. Come on up.
This is all kind of nervous up here. I've never done this before.
I promise we don't bite. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Yeah, obviously I'm here very concerned about the proposed houseless parking situation. And while I do believe that the merit of the program is wonderful, and I don't think anyone in Tigard would say that we are not compassionate, I think the concern is the location and how these locations are being chosen. And driving here, parking in this empty parking lot that you have, it makes me wonder why we're not considering using public spaces that would be safer. You've got the police department right here. If we're generally concerned about the safety of people living in their cars for any period of time, I can't think of a safer place to be than the parking lot right outside the door. And that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Ann. I have a Mary post, but you didn't indicate your status. Okay. No, I'm gonna just go through all of the against, but I'll call you up because I got the thumbs up, so I think you're in the for column. Let's let's see. Judy Bowerman? Welcome, Judy.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I actually agree with Ann. My heart does go out to people that have found themselves in an unfortunate situation. And I do want to thank you for bringing it to the attention, because as a community and as a human being, we need to consider all sorts of situations get people into positions like that. But it's a safety issue that I am personally so concerned about. And with what Ann brought up, it's an excellent point. There is protection not only for the people in their cars, but unfortunate things happen. And we have to consider the greater community in which we choose to have something like this. So I do respectfully request that you consider a safer location for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. We have Mark Bowerman. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm Judy's husband, and we do share like opinions on this. It is a concern, I guess, of the neighborhood of looking at safety on both ends. We understand that, we need to be compassionate towards, the homeless and their unfortunate circumstances that they do get into, being most of it not their fault, But on the other hand, we have to look at our community, our neighbors, our children, and their safety, and to make sure that that's not just, we'll probably take care of that, but it's basically, yeah, we're gonna look into that and make sure that this is monitored properly. And that's what our basic concern is about, is to make sure if this did go forward, that it's organized and monitored. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Chris Dunn. Welcome, Chris.
Again, thank you all for letting us be here. We appreciate the forum. I was actually at the meeting, and yeah, I got a little out of hand, to say the least. People talking over each other, but the passion was there. The concern was there. And it's like these folks have said, it's the location, it's not the program. Nobody's against that. And the whole thing of what happens down the road, is it monitored, is it not monitored? Those answers couldn't really be answered at that meeting. And we didn't even know this was happening until all of a sudden a flurry in the neighborhood. So public forums for us, we really appreciate. So thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Chris. Marty Willis. Welcome, Marty.
I agree with everything everybody has said thus far, and one of the concerns that I personally have is we live in an area that has a lot of construction and a lot of homeless people that have just kind of showed up out of nowhere, borrowing porta potties and everything else. My concern is that if we open up this type of thing in Bull Mountain, that it will just open up everything to so many more people that might be coming in and taking advantage of the situation. And if there isn't any, I'm sorry, I hate public speaking.
You're doing great. I promise we don't bite.
No, but I've lived on Bull Mountain for 35 years, and it used to be this nice, quiet little place. Am I out of time?
You are.
Okay. I am totally against it. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Marty. We have Severin Hamilton. Welcome, Severin.
Hi there, good to see you again. So yeah, it's not a matter of pushing it.
Oh, push it so it's green.
Push still screen.
There we
Okay.
go.
Thank you for your time.
Can we
It's-
start the timer over? I just want
All
to
right.
make sure.
So I'm not here to argue the merits of the program. I think there's people on both sides that have varying degrees of compassion for those who experience homelessness. I think the issue is location and the process that took place in terms of this. It was said at the meeting that it had been going on for 8 to 12 months between the City of Tigard, Just Compassion, and Christ the King Lutheran. And I heard about it. I live right next door to the church. I heard about it by a knock on the door. So there was no real efforts to make the public aware of it. So I think it's something that the public needs to be a part of the conversation. I would urge that any funding considerations be put to a council vote, that qualifying criteria for location be established. I'm deeply concerned with the homeless issue. I think what happened in Beaverton at the other Just Compassion site with a man who sadly died after lighting himself on fire is obviously telling of the deeper issues, and I'm deeply concerned with the drugs that come, and there was no drug testing for these safe parking programs. So thank you for your time. I hope the conversation continues.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I don't have anyone else on my list against, but I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone additional who wasn't called on? Okay. We will move on to the for column. Craig Wagner. Welcome, Craig.
Testing. I live across 99W from the church, about a 10-minute walk. When I first heard about the program, I had some concerns. Excuse me. But I did my research. I found out about how long the Beaverton program's been running, the success that they've had with that. It's nice to see a church stepping up and helping the lesser folks. The fact is the homeless are coming, whether we want them parking at the church or not. There's been an RV parked down the street from us for several months now. It's clean. They don't cause any trouble. I don't see the problem. The program has guidelines, as other speakers have said. And I just don't see why it's such a big deal. So.
Thank you, Craig. I believe I missed a raised hand in the against.
Sorry, I'm new to this, and I just wanted to make sure, is it all public comment for just this topic or for
Well,
the entire night? So,
there is some sprinkled in for Summer Lake fishing and some other things that I will get to after this general topic has concluded.
okay, wonderful.
Excellent. Okay.
About the fireworks.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I got you. We will move on to Mary Post in the for. Mary, welcome.
Okay, well, I have been a volunteer at Just Compassion for almost 5 years. I moved here and I saw this as an opportunity of something I could do. I have met wonderful people. Sure, they have people that have problems. They all have problems or they wouldn't be there. But one lady that I met lived in a safe park over in Beaverton, and she was one of 3 women. They were in this spot. It was clean. They have a large porta potty and shower and water for them, and they have a pod for them. And it was locked. And when I went to take her something that she could use, like a new barbecue or something, and had permission for me to go, then she could unlock the gate for me to go in and take it to her. Otherwise, people were not going in and out. It was a very secure place. I had to hunt to find it. And those people that are there are
Mary, you're out of
vetted.
time.
Sure, they are vetted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marissa Phillips. Welcome, Marissa. I did that too a minute ago, but I could hide it. Y'all can't see the spill.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name's Marissa Phillips. I've been in the community for 28 years. If you look at the Facebook groups this week for the local communities, you'll find women all over the place asking for assistance right now because last month they lost a week of work and they can't pay their rent. They're facing eviction in the coming months as a result. In addition, there is no assistance available because it's all tapped out. It's real easy to tell people to call 211 for help. When 211 answers, the numbers they give you will all tell you that there is nothing available. I have a woman that I mentor who is right now out driving Amazon with her 2.5-year-old son to make up money that she lost during the storm. She's out driving Amazon to do that. If this program had been put into place with 3 single moms there without an issue, would last week's episode even have happened?
Marissa, you're
Places
out of
do
time.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is everybody I have in person. 4, is there anyone who did not get their name on the sheet? Okay. I would ask that since we know the phone-in caller is 4, to go ahead and include that in this section, and then we will move on to other comment. Mr. Vang, are you able to let our phone caller in?
Yep, I'm going to move her into the call right now. Here. Lisa, you're good to go.
Hi there. My name is Lisa. I attended both meetings last week, and I'm here in support of the safe parking program in any location in Tigard where it can be properly and safely hosted. I deeply appreciate that many of those who have spoken already have stated that they are empathetic to the struggles of houseless individuals. I want to let the mayor and council know that I see and recognize the challenge that they are facing in addressing the houselessness crisis when there are likely going to be objections to it in every neighborhood who say that they do not want it in their backyard. The unfortunate reality is that this perspective tends to create the same harms as the perspective that we shouldn't help the houseless at all, because it hinders the efforts of nonprofit organizations and local governments to address issues like houselessness and poverty in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Denise Olson for Summer Lake Fishing. Stop Summer Lake Fishing. Denise, are you here? Okay. We will move on to Sarah Darland. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Darland, and I live in the Genesis Loop neighborhood. Today, I'd like to talk about community engagement and transparency in relation to how our city manages our wetlands and ask that Tigard join the Tualatin Basin Beaver Strategy Project. I volunteer for the Wetlands Conservancy, and I personally surveyed the wetlands both north and south of Walnut for beaver activity. I also volunteer for Nitrate Watch and take nitrate measurements throughout our watershed. I love our wetlands and see them as something that the city is doing right in the face of climate change. I'd like to ask the city to host an information session for the community about what its intentions are with the Dairy Dell wetlands. I was told the creek channel south of Walnut will be rerouted. I was also told the area is planned to be beaver-free, but I'm unclear on how the city intends to keep them out. I'd also like the city to either create or share a policy with a clear order of steps and escalation process for wetland and infrastructure conflict. And I'd also like the city to join the Tualatin Basin Beaver Strategy Project. This project is a collaboration between the Tualatin River Watershed Council and other programs and things around the area.
You're welcome to email us the rest of it if you were unable to finish it.
Oh, thank you.
And that goes for all of you too. We are always available by email. Jeff Darland, come on up. We look forward to your email.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Jeff Darland. I also live in Genesis Loop, and I love our creek system. I was fortunate enough to sit down with some folks at the city today for quite some time, and they walked me through the history and some of the challenges which led to this killing of beavers. And I left It's a complex issue, and I left feeling confident that the removal was necessary and it was done as a last resort, and nobody really wanted to have it happen. But it highlighted to me some of the challenges we're facing as ecological recovery efforts start or continue to encroach on our infrastructure, whether it's public or private. And this isn't something we seem to really be talking about. And if we're a beaver dam away from an infrastructure problem, there's some resiliency issues that I think also need to be discussed. I'd like to suggest the City Council commit to notifying the public in advance of any future beaver eliminations to allow for the possibility of public engagement and alternative relocation options. And I think we would benefit from explicit maps showing where ecological conflict is running up against infrastructure problems, and I will email the rest. Sorry,
Thank you,
I was
Jeff.
counting on 2 minutes.
Also, I have some city pins for your kiddos. Teresa, welcome. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Teresa Hellstrom, and I'm the youth pastor from Tiger Church of God. For over 25 years, our church has been selling fireworks in the city of Tigard. I have found no other fundraiser that can provide the fireworks sale that fireworks sales have been able to provide, bringing in an approximate income of $12,000 to $16,000 in sales each year. Each and every dollar is used to provide a very large amount of outreach to this community. I sincerely ask that you do not ban fireworks sales because it will greatly affect the nonprofits who are making a big difference in your area. We are able to reach out to a multitude of diversity of color and socioeconomic circumstances and underprivileged populations, and we would not be able to do what we do if it wasn't for the fireworks.
Thank you, Teresa. Also, if there is additional information, please email us. I want to add anybody who added their email to the sign-in sheet. We are starting an email list for anybody who contacts us regarding the Safe Lots issue. If you'd like your name to be added because you didn't add your email, we can start a paper in the back to make sure that we can add you to that list, or I can put this back if you want to add your name to it, so we make sure that you're included. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your comments. We hear you, we're listening to you, and we're working forward to make sure that that's taken into consideration. And again, I just want to reiterate, no decisions have been made, no permits have been issued, no permits have been applied for, and we are planning for robust community conversations going forward. We know that there were frustrations with these two meetings. Not everybody could physically get into the first one. Even I couldn't get into the second one. So I hear you, and we hear you, and this is the beginning, not the end of the conversation. So thank you for being here. We are not offended if you choose to leave at this point. You are welcome to do so. You're welcome to stay as well. But I will hand these back, so if you want to add your name to the list. The stars next to your name just means that I checked you off and you were accounted for. It doesn't mean anything other than that. Thank you, Jesse. Okay. We'll just give a minute for everyone to leave. Thank you for coming. It was nice to meet you. am going to ask if y'all are having conversations, please move that outside to the breezeway so we can continue the council meeting. We will move on to the city manager report with City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, good evening, Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and my teammates that are here. Just want to start by thanking those, many of them have left now, for the way they handled public comment tonight. So thank you for your guidance, and thank you to our community for adhering to that. So it's always appreciated. I'll be brief tonight, just because of the extended public comment. Just kind of one of the feel-good stories that our library always helps share with us, and I think it's important to keep that. Is last week, or in January, some of our librarians visited 7 different kindergartens through our Tigard-Tualatin School District, and they shared golden tickets. So for those of you that are familiar with the golden tickets, that can be exchanged for a free book. And within the first 4 hours, we received our first ticket, and then we received 33 tickets soon thereafter. So thanks to the kids and the schools for partnering with us. As many of you know, all of our students have access to our library through our student library program that we have, and we'll continue that by having some additional kindergarten visits in February as well, so we can continue with the golden ticket and getting children introduced to our library as well as to the books that they receive. So thanks to Halstead and our team for that. And then just my final item for tonight is due to some of the topics that you're talking about tonight, they influence next week's agenda, which is the February 13th. We typically have that posted by now. We're holding on that so we can get the direction that we need this evening. That can then inform a couple of the items to make sure that we properly have that information for the public to review prior to your conversations next week. And then, Mayor, because both the ballot measures may require some conversation, I would suggest that we move those in front of the drone conversation this evening, and then we can move into that following those if the council and you are open to that. Thank you.
Are there any strong objections to moving the drone conversation to the end of the meeting? Okay. Seeing that, thank you. We will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda and the local contract review board so it's the council and the local contract review board. So the consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Today we have 2 items on our consent agenda. The first is a contract amendment for Red Rock Creek stabilization and enhancement, and the second is the 2024 state and federal legislative agendas. If you're looking for a bulk of discussion on the agendas, it happened in January, so this is sort of the final product moving forward, if you're wondering why we're not talking about it today. Are there any questions or comments or a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make one comment about the 2024 state legislative agenda. It's a word change. So I don't know if you want me to request that it be pulled, or I just mention the word change after we've approved the contract amendment for Red Rock Creek stabilization.
I'm looking at the city attorney for her preference.
So, Council, if it's a substantive change, I would suggest pulling it. If it's just a minor change, you can adopt the consent agenda as amended.
It's minor. Okay. So we will, can you let us know what it is?
Yes, it's changing. It's a word equitable and putting it in front of charge ahead incentives, because charge ahead incentives, that program is an equitable low income rebate incentive for electric vehicles. So it's on the first page under transportation infrastructure, greenhouse gas emissions state reduction targets. And instead of having equitable Oregon electric vehicle rebate, it's actually Oregon electric vehicle rebate incentives, including the equitable charge ahead incentives.
Got it. So it's moving a word.
Correct. Just to further describe the program. Thank
Do
you,
we
Mayor.
need a motion and second, or should the motion be with these changes?
Yes, the latter, yep.
Can you make a motion amending that? Thank you.
Okay. Mayor and Council, I'd like to make a motion to amend the 2024 state legislative agenda to move the word equitable from Oregon electric vehicle rebate to including the equitable charge ahead incentives rebate.
And to approve the consent agenda?
And to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mayor, I would also like to have a slight tweak to the state legislative agenda item by moving Measure 110 and housing services above the transportation infrastructure. Because from what I understand, this legislative session will be focused really heavily on Measure 110 and housing services. So I think it will make sense, for busy legislatures to quickly look at this and see those two items.
So you will move to amend the motion?
Yes, and so I would like to amend the motion to move Measure 110 reform section and the housing services section above the transportation infrastructure section.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, and I will just say, so I spent my entire day today down in Salem lobbying on behalf of the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium Executive Committee. Whew, that's a mouthful. And we had very precious time with legislators today, and the two things that as a committee we talked about were Measure 110 and housing services, though I think that's certainly spot on as far as what the legislature is focused on. Is there any additional discussion? Yep, Councilor Singh?
Yeah, just a procedural question. So if I'm gonna vote, or if I'm want to focus on Measure 110, our stance on Measure 110, and I want to vote specifically no on that agenda or that specific item, do I have to pull it out?
So we are discussing the Council President whose amendment to the original motion. So we need to deal with that amendment first.
Okay.
And then if you want to make an additional amendment to pull it or to make changes to it, we can talk about it at that point. Okay, sounds good. Ooh, this is fun. I get to flex my Robert Rules of Order. Is there any additional discussion to Council President whose motion to move Measure 110 and housing services up? Seeing none, will the city recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes.
Mayor Dube?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes.
Councilor Singh?
No.
Councilor Wolf?
And again, just to clarify, we are voting on the amendment only, and we'll come back. Yes.
Yep. The motion passes to move Measure 110 and housing services above transportation in the state legislative agenda by 4-1. Councilor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I would like to, item B removed for a separate discussion, or can I talk specifically on?
Well, there's still an original motion to approve these.
Okay.
So you would be amending the motion to move or strike or change the Measure 110 reform. So you would be making a motion to amend the current motion.
Okay.
It's super confusing, but
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay. All right, that's fine, I think. Can I just speak?
Yeah.
Okay. So my issue is specifically on our stance, how it's stated right now for Measure 110. I'll try to be brief. So the data is clear. We cannot arrest our way out of homelessness, drug use, or poverty. Access to drug treatment, services, and housing are solutions we need, not more police, jails, and prisons. I oppose any and all actions by lawmakers to arrest and jail Oregonians experiencing drug addiction. Jail and criminalization are not real solutions to drug addiction or homelessness. Real solutions involve more treatment, housing, non-police mobile crisis counselors, and neighborhood cleanup and revitalization programs. I urge lawmakers to support evidence-based solutions that prevent crime by addressing the root causes, like affordable housing, mental health, and addiction services, and economic growth. 50 years of a failed war on drugs showed that jail time for people experiencing addiction only made the problems worse. Research shows harsher penalties don't stop drug use. The data is clear that criminalization worsens drug addiction, overdoses, and mental health, and creates severe obstacles to housing, education, and jobs. We can't expect police to solve every social problem, from kids skipping school to mental illness, homelessness, and addiction. It's time for solutions that let mental health and drug treatment professionals help people who need and want treatment, freeing up police to focus on violent crime. We should be sending crisis counselors instead of police to respond to 911 calls about people having mental health and addiction crisis. Recriminalizing cannot be part of the solution and would only have unintended harms to our communities, especially Black and brown people. State lawmakers are recklessly pushing forward with House Bill 4002, which will criminalize Oregonians, both youth and adults, who are caught by police with very small user-level amounts of drugs. Lawmakers insist that they will mitigate the harms and violence of the criminal system by deflecting people away from jail and prisons to connect them with treatment resources. However, the current criminal system is not equipped to effectively deflect people away from jail and prisons. With House Bill 4002, lawmakers are knowingly repeating the failed war on drugs, which wasted billions of tax dollars that should have been used for treatment and housing instead of being used on police, jails, and prisons, and inflicted government harm and violence on people, especially Black, brown, indigenous, low-income, LGBTQ+, and rural Oregonians. We need treatment beds, not jail beds. I will be voting no on item B because I do not support the efforts to reform existing language and the rollbacks on Measure 110. Thank you.
Did you want to make a motion to remove that from the agenda, or do you want to just stand with the comments that you made?
I'll just stand with the comments. Sorry.
Stand with the comments. Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Okay. We will move forward and vote on the original motion. Remember, the amendment passed to move things, and so the original motion on the table is to move the consent agenda as presented with one change, moving from equitable Oregon electric vehicle rebate to Oregon electric vehicle rebate incentives, including the equitable charge ahead incentives. Any additional comments? Seeing none, City Recorder Krager, please call a roll call vote.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Shaw,
Yes.
Councilor Singh,
No.
Councilor Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes with the changes 4-1. We will move on to consider the intergovernmental. Oh, no, we're moving. Is that what we're moving? No, we're moving the drone conversation. Or do you want to move them both? I guess that's a question.
No, I think the first item we can handle, then
Okay.
I'd move the drones.
So we will consider an IGA between the City of Tigard and Metro for accepting the Steve Street Park Development Project. And we have Parks and Recreation Manager Grun and Project Engineer Stadler to give the report. Welcome. It's nice to see you both. I feel like it's been a while.
Mayor Lube, can I make a quick point before we start our next? I just wanted to appreciate the counselor's words, and I think just as an education component for the council, this is going to be a rapid session, but as language and as actions come forward, I would really appreciate those updates and an opportunity to have those conversations. I think it's really critical. Appreciate your advocacy in Salem, but to even learn more about that, and I just appreciate Councilor Singh's words. So thank you.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and I appreciate the conversation. I'm happy to send out updates, even updates from our legislative team and the legislative team that works for us from MMC on both of these issues, because it is a short session. It is rapidly changing. I mean, even the conversation was, hey, did you get the change this morning? And it's like, so just know that we will pump out information, but as soon as we send it, it could be different. But happy to get everyone involved and not break any public meeting laws by having conversations. Hello.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Liu, Council. It's good to see you all again. Rick Ruin, Parks, Recreation, and Infrastructure Manager.
Carla Stetter, Project Manager, Engineering Project Manager.
Yeah, we're excited to be here tonight to talk about an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Tigard and Metro and Steve Street Park. And if we can go to the next slide. So tonight we just wanted to discuss the IGA a little bit, give you an update on the status of the efforts made so far, little background information on where we've been and where we're going, and then ask you to approve the Metro Local Share IGA to include Steve Street Park, and we'll explain more detail. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, great. So a little bit of history and background. Steve Street Park was purchased by the city in 2013 with proceeds from the 2010 Tigard Bond Fund. The Parks and Recreation Division, Public Works Engineering, completed a site plan, initial site plan of the property in 2015. With the adoption of the Parks and Rec System Plan in 2022, it identified 12 gap areas of the city where some of our community was outside of a 10-minute walk to the park on the edges, and as our goal was to try to make a walkable city. Steve Street Park is in gap area 11 and does serve a fair amount of households, 260 or so households, and more than 650 community members. With the passage of the 2019 Metro bond, it does allocate $3.1 million more or less to the city of Tigard. Tonight is just about a portion of that, and Carla and I will explain more, but it is for eligible projects, and we did meet with Metro a number of times. We walked the property to make sure that Steve Street Park fit the criteria, which is very extensive criteria about equity, inclusion, diversity. And subsequently, Carla led the effort and our former community engagement coordinator led some significant efforts and outreach to our community members. And subsequently, Carla did a great job submitting the final local share application package. It was quite an effort, and that was submitted to Metro and subsequently approved. So next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Carla to talk a little bit more specifically about the site.
So where we're at now as far as design and moving the project forward, we have a master plan completed in 2015, and it's shown above. It's a quaint neighborhood park, you know, providing play areas, nature play areas, garden beds, community garden beds, and then also site access and a circular trail, which has been what we hear at every public outreach meeting. We want loop trails, we want loop trails, we want loop trails, no matter what size they are. So this is the plan that happened in 2015, and this is the layout of it. We do expect to go through a preliminary design phase. There are there are two issues in here that could drive the costs up significantly, and so we want to go through, first go through a costing phase, and that will let us know, what the impact will be, and basically those impacts come from Tigard significant wetland, and then also the costs of dedicating additional road right-of-way and road lighting. And so we're looking at the budget that we have. We want to make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck for the recreation activities that'll be taking place at a neighborhood park. So that will be coming. We can move to the next slide, and I can talk about outcomes and delivery and what you can expect moving forward. So today we'll approve the IGA, and then we also are augmenting the, I believe it's 1.3 million with some SDC funding in order to make the project whole. Once we've freed up the local share funding, we can move forward to secure a consultant. And let's see, there's been a strong interest by the community during outreach and engagement to consider renaming of the park. So we're in the process of looking at that. We had probably 85 different names submitted, and the neighborhood has made it very clear they'd like to see that happen. And we expect to go to bid in a year from now, and which is a good time to bid a project to get the best costs. Winter is a great time when contractors are looking for filling their summer workloads. And we expect the park to be constructed by the end of 2025.
Okay, next slide, please. So to kind of wrap this up, the project is consistent with our Parks and Rec system plan and the criteria established by the Metro Local Share Handbook. The fiscal impact to the budget, the total cost of the project is about 1.8 million, currently estimated. About 1.3 of that would be Metro Local Share. The rest, as Carla mentioned, would come from park system development charges. As we start working on Began Park, we'll come back to you for an amendment to the IGA. If you approve that tonight, that would then include the remaining funds for Began. But right now, we're just bringing forward Steve Street Park. So with all that said, staff recommends council approve the IGA between the City of Tigard and Metro in substantially the form as provided, and further authorize the city manager to execute. So be happy to answer any questions if you have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there questions? Yeah, Council President Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rick and Carla, for your presentation, and thank you for submitting a list of extensive outreach effort you have done. It's very impressive, so thank you. I'm very excited about this project because we're trying to reach the goal of 10, 15-minute walk to green space for everyone. My question is, are there any plans for like running water and bathroom in this, given the limited budget?
Typically our neighborhood parks do not include restrooms. We do in community parks, but neighborhood serving parks generally are not destination parks. So again, typically we do not include. If we did, it would certainly drive the cost up significantly. The last quote we had was about $350,000 for a restroom.
Yeah. How about any kind of shading, protect from elements?
Address that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, one of our outreach questions was, do you have any preferences on tree types? And provided the public with a look of that, because we're going to be there's community gardens, so we're going to be focusing on making sure that gets enough sun. But our other goal will be to provide a significant amount of shade within the project. So trees following the walkway, probably a number of trees that'll be designed as part of the nature play area. So there should be quite a bit of shade coming from that. And then we'll see what we can fit in once we get a stronger idea of where our budget's sitting.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because one thing I heard feedback from Universal is that, you know, as the city knows, they're putting the umbrellas. It's, you know, when it's too hot, people want shade. When it's raining, too cold, people want shade. So, tree takes a while to grow. So, so yeah, anything you can fit in to provide at least temporary shading, I think that would be a great addition. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Additional questions? No. I mean, we've been talking about this park since, before I was on the Parks Board as a liaison, but certainly during the time, and I know the community has to be really excited because even this council has received public comment on it moving forward. I'm really excited about the renaming of the park, and I can't help but think of like Bodie McBoatface. What are there some fun names? Can you give us a preview of some of the names that came forward? I mean, that's what happened. Like having a young child name this could be really fun.
Yeah, I can't recall. It's been a while since I looked at the list. What we're hoping to do, Mayor, is our Parks and Rec Advisory Board. We did bring the list to them, Councilor Shaw. I think it was about 2 meetings ago, and what their ask was if they could go out to the park and get a better feeling of that. So our goal is to bring you back maybe a short list. We can certainly share the whole list with you. And the Parks and Rec Advisory Board would love to advocate, their top 5 recommendations. So at some point here in the coming months, we'd love to come back and have that discussion on the naming. But I just can't think unless you can recall some of the names.
There were so many.
There were so many.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I just, again, I think of like the naming of it's amazing when you name boats or snow plows. Some communities name snow plows every year, which is super fun.
It's fun, yeah.
So, Councilor Shaw, did you have something to add?
No, I just didn't want to prejudice. I remember a couple of names, but I didn't want to prejudice the advisory board. But just want to thank staff. This is exciting to have this come to fruition. So
thank you.
Well, I am on the edge of my seat for names. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the IGA between the City of Tigard and Metro and authorize the city manager to execute it.
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the youth counselor give an advisory vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you for being here, and I'm excited. We will move on. Again, if you're looking for item number 7, it is going to be moved to the end of the council meeting, and so we will move on to the renewal levy, first discussion of ballot title with City Attorney Rajala.
Good evening, Council. So this is our presentation discussion of the draft ballot titles. So as you'll recall, last meeting, you gave us direction as to general messages, themes, what you wanted to see in the ballot titles. We took those and developed a draft that was sent to you all individually for comments. We received comments back, and I incorporated the non-substantive comments and sent you some follow-up substantive comments that we're asking your guidance on tonight. So starting with the police public safety renewal, there are 2 changes, substantive changes that were suggested. Both of these would fit within the allowed word count. So these are a policy discussion for council tonight. The first one is to replace public safety with police patrols throughout the document. And the second one is to change the sentence that currently reads, the addition of these officers allowed an increase in minimum staffing for the first time in over 25 years, to change that to, in addition to these officers, the addition of these officers has allowed the Tigard Police to continue to grow to the largest it's ever been. So again, both of those are available with the words you have, and we're asking your guidance tonight as to whether you would entertain making those changes to the current document.
Thank you. So because of the two substantive changes, it's been a lot of speaking tonight. Let's go ahead and start by discussing those one-on-one. I think that's a great place to start. So the first suggestion is to replace public safety with police patrols throughout the document. Is there support, concern, questions? And yeah, Councilor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I would be inclined to leave the language as it states, because this levy also includes de-escalation services, support services within the police department. So I think that it more broadly speaks to all the services and resources provided by this levy. So thank you.
Council President Hu?
I agree with Councilor Wolf. Police patrol is just one aspect of the levy, so I don't think just by saying police patrol is inclusive enough of what this levy is about. So I will not change it.
Thank you. Councilor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor, and I would concur with Councilor Wolf and Council President Hu, and not make the change, but keep it as public safety.
Youth Councilor Bogle.
Yeah, I agree. Just echoing what's been said and keeping it broad so that when people are looking at it, they can kind of see that as a whole and not just something more specific. So I agree.
Councilor Singh?
Thanks, Mayor. To me, public safety refers to the well-being and protection of the general public. This usually seen as a responsibility of the government, which includes measures like police and law enforcement, fire departments and emergency services, public health initiatives, building codes and safety regulations, disaster preparedness and response. This proposed levy does not include other aspects of public safety that I just mentioned, and strictly focuses on retaining police services within the Tigard Police Department. Therefore, it is a misnomer to label this as public safety services, and we should be clear that this is about policing. The ballot title in the original levy was titled Increase Tigard Neighborhood Police Patrols through Local Option Levy, and the words public safety services was not mentioned in the question, summary, and content of that ballot measure. That measure still successfully passed in 2020 and was more accurate and honest in what the levy entailed than what is proposed currently.
Thank you, Councilor Singh. Is there anyone who has who wants to speak in response to Councilor Singh's comments? So I will say, I think, we talked long and hard. This was a very long debate on whether or not to use public safety or to use police services. I don't think the use of public safety, when we use that verbiage, means that we have to talk about everything under that umbrella at all times. And I think it's come to understanding, and we as a country have come a long way, and the city of Tigard has come a long way since the first time we passed that levy. And I do believe that all of these services are incorporated into public safety, and it feels like actually public safety, because of those additional services provided, to me is a more accurate description than just using police patrols, because it's so much more than just patrols. But I understand where you're coming from, and I hear you. I personally disagree that you can't use public safety unless you're talking about everything all the time. Councilor Wolf.
And did I shut it off? Oh, sorry. But I also appreciate within the language, it very clearly spells out what it's paying for. So I hope our voters take the time to read through what is this levy, the 29 cents per thousand, providing services for our community, and then it lists those pieces out. So I feel that transparency of, we're asking you to approve this is what you will get from those services, or from that levy, is really important, and Shelby has provided that in this context. So thank you.
So I'm hearing just a general consensus to not adopt the recommended change. Does that feel fair? Okay. We will move on to the next recommended change, which is to change the addition of these officers allowed an increase in minimum staffing for the first time in over 25 years, to the addition of these officers has allowed the Tigard Police to continue to grow to the largest it's ever been. I open it up for comments regarding this change, this recommended change. Yeah, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. In regards to the second suggestion, the sentence, the addition of these officers allowed an increase in minimum staffing for the first time in over 25 years, to me sounds complicated and makes it sound like the city has not really invested in policing for the first time in 25 years, when we know that most police department budgets in our state and expenditures has only increased over time.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. I guess I would, I'm going to take the courtesy, and I see you, Council President Hu. But I'm going to respond to that and just say, I think the increase of the 3% budget over time, I don't know that I would necessarily argue that that means a fundamental increase in the budgets when there isn't an increase in taxes. And to me, the second sentence is actually incredibly sort of misleading with the verbiage of saying it's the largest it's ever been. While that's not technically accurate, I think that leads somebody to believe that this department is robust and overfilled and all of these sorts of things. And I would still argue that 3 officers minimum staffing is not enough for our community. And the bottom to me is really misleading, where the top is true. We haven't increased patrols in over 25 years. And I think that's something that the community is shocked when they learn about that fact. So I'm just speaking for me, we haven't increased patrols. And so I think it's more helpful to explain it in that verbiage than what I feel is misleading to indicate that the services are bloated, even though they have increased with percentages like every other part of the city budget. And as we know, just measures 5 and 50, I'll get up on the soapbox, have made it increasingly challenging for Tigard cities across the state in order to fund their services. There are many cities who, quite frankly, are looking to go bankrupt in the next 3 to 5 years because they're unable to keep up with providing services that community is asking for. I've never once had a community member come to me and ask for less services. And yet when they don't understand, we're talking about these inflation costs, and we're talking about construction, and we can't do a lot of these capital projects because they're eating up way more of the budget. Our city budget cannot grow more than 3%. We cannot increase your taxes more than 3%. And you are taxed on your assessed value, not your real property value. So your real property value has skyrocketed. That does not mean that all of a sudden the city gets to make all of this money off of your increased property value. It's still based on assessed value, which again can only go up at 3%. And when you have expenses going up at 10%, I feel like I got on a soapbox, sorry. When your expenses go up at 10 and you can only get 3, the only option is to find other revenue sources, which cities are forced to do with these levies and other ways to do it, or to reduce services. And nobody is being asked, no city that I have ever spoken to and no community member that I have ever spoken to has asked for a reduction in services. It's always asking for more, or how can we do it better? And we do it better. Like, we've done an incredible job. We've been audited as a city recently that says we are actually incredibly efficient with the dollars that we have. So I apologize, but I also think it's important to talk about these sorts of things because there's a lot of assumptions out there about how taxes work. So I apologize. I will re-steer us back to this conversation over the change in verbiage. Council President Hu.
Thank you, Mayor. It's great because to me, context matters, right? While the proposed change, may in some certain aspect it's true, it's the biggest ever, but at the same time, I think it's lacking in context. And in order to put in all the context, we have to put in most of the stuff you just said, which there's no space. So for the reason I just stated, there's no context in the second in the proposed change, so I will not support it. However, the original language, the additional of this officer allow an increase in minimum staffing for the first time in 25 years. For some reason, I'm not comfortable with the word minimum because I don't know who made that judgment on minimum. I think if we just strike out the word minimum, the addition of this officer allow an increase in staffing for the first time over 25 years. I think that's what would be a more objective way of saying it. So I don't know what other counselor or youth thought on the word minimum, because to me, that doesn't sit right with me, that word, for some reason. So.
I see the, come on up, Chief. Welcome to the conversation.
The gear caught me getting into the chair. Thank you, Mayor and Council President Hu, councilors. By just saying that it would be an increase in staffing for the first time in 25 years would actually be an inaccurate statement if it stated that. There has been other incremental changes and increases in that 25-year period. So if we struck out the minimum staffing portion, that would then be an inaccurate statement if we use that.
So what does minimum staffing mean?
So the minimum staffing that we use is what is the minimally safe number of officers to have on the street at any one time. And so, for example, when the mayor referenced 3 officers, tonight on night shift, the minimum staffing level is 3 officers and a supervisor. Now, I didn't look at the schedule before I came in, so I'm not sure if that's how many are actually working tonight, but we will not let that number be less than that. So by adding additional officers, it allows us to increase that number to say 4 or 5, depending on the shift or the time of day. And that's where the minimum staffing number comes in.
I will say, so on the chief dashboard, the police dashboard that we get every month, it does talk about the minimum staffing levels for each of the different shifts. And there has been an increase, I'm looking at both of you, truly an increase in the percentage. Has the percentage of minimum time we are on minimum staffing gone down since the levy has gone up? Been included? Does that make sense? Do we have less time on truly minimum staffing and more time above that with the addition of the levy?
Correct.
Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah, no, I'm looking at Council President Hu because I know what I said was just super confusing. So let me put it this way. The minimum staffing before, and I'm just going to use percentages here. Please know these are not accurate percentages. These are used for estimating purposes only. So say before the levy, minimum staffing was at 75% all the time. So with the addition of the levy, instead of 75%, maybe we're at 50%. So 25% of the time we are at a higher staffing level because of the addition of the officers. Does that make sense?
Well, can we just say that I agree? I don't agree with the proposed change to the language. Okay. But can I have an opportunity to digest this minimum, the word minimum, with more information provided?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, thank you.
Councilor Wolf.
Could give Council President Hu a plug for the Tigard Police Academy, Community Academy, and you can have a whole evening talking about patrol staffing, but I digress. I was wondering, and Shelby, this will make you work because you have to drop a word, thinking about the conversations about patrol, or if you added patrol staffing, does that give clarity and a succinct response? And it might not, but it also acknowledges Councilor Singh's comment. So I'm wondering if that is a word, but then that puts us a word over, and I'm quite certain that she could master that task, but that's my wondering. So thank you.
Yeah, maybe patrolling. Yeah, that make more sense.
Chief, is that an accurate statement to add that? Because I don't want to muddy the water further.
So if we added patrol staffing, minimum patrol staffing, yes, that would be an accurate statement. Yes.
And that's just adding one word, and we're at 174, and adding one word puts us at 175. Because it wouldn't be patrol officers, it would just be patrol staffing.
Oh, no, keep the minimum, but that's at 175.
Keeping the original verbiage is at 174. So if we add the word patrol, that gets us to 175, which is the magic spot.
Okay.
For those who don't know, I guess we should back up and talk about this. So when we are talking about ballot title language, there are specific rules around the caption, the question, and the summary, and exact number of words that we have to use. And for instance, in the question, we have to include the rate per $1,000. So those are reductions in the actual words that we can add because we have to do those. So it's 10 for the caption, 20 for the question, and 175 for the summary, which means that every word is precious and every word matters, which is succinct, so it's helpful for people. I just wanted to give that additional context, which also applies to the next conversation where we're going to talk about the next one. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, and want to make a plug too for the Community Academy, Council President Hu. It's an excellent program and very informative. And also just thank you to Councillor Singh for your comments. I had not thought of it with that perspective. I do think the city has been incredibly judicious with its police budget and with the city budget as a whole, as the mayor had mentioned in our audits. I don't think we've been like other cities and even the state in over investing. So I do think that this is a very important levy, but I also would recommend that we not change to the verbiage, but I'm okay if we say minimum patrol.
So it feels like we've landed on adding the word patrol, which feels acceptable to the chief and the city attorney. So we've answered the two substantive changes, requested changes. Are there any additional changes to the caption, question, or summary as a whole? I know there were incremental changes that were made. So now that we've made that one addition, talking about it as a whole.
Mayor, I have no additional changes or requests.
None here, but I appreciate Councillor Singh bringing up the point.
I think we're all better when we have robust discussion. Do you feel like you have the guidance that you need, City Attorney Rojala?
I do, thank you. And several of you have brought up word count, so I also wanted to ask, while we are now at 175 words on this, we have 500 words in the explanatory statement. So if there are any themes that you think should be expanded upon, anything that was missed out of this short version, please let us know that. And the next item after the ballot title will be drafting the explanatory statement. So any additional feedback you have for us on that would be appreciated.
500 words feels like an embarrassment of riches after debating 20. Okay, we will move on to the charter amendment, which is also the first discussion of the ballot title, also with City Attorney Rojala. Welcome back.
Thank you. So similar to the renewal levy, this was circulated for review. We were able to cut a couple words out of the original draft, and that made room for the only substantive change proposed on this would be to, in the bulleted list of key changes, to add a new bullet that says raising the threshold for future charter changes by initiative. And that would bring us to 173 words, which is within our total. So asking for your guidance on that.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Council President who I know wants to bring up a discussion point on the substance of the proposed amendment. So I think this is, just to set the tone, this is less a discussion about the caption, question, and summary, and more about the substance of the actual amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. But those are related because I do believe that the raising the threshold for future charter change by initiative is a big change, right? Because City Attorney Rojala, I asked her a few more follow-up questions about how many other cities in Oregon actually had this higher threshold for the initiative process, and she mentioned Gresham has 60%. But in addition to 60% threshold, our proposed charter will also require the amendment by initiative can only brought forward to voter during primary and general election, so twice every 2 years. So to me, it seems like a very, very high standard for amending the charter by initiative. And I understand, I watched the Charter Review Committee's meeting. I know their concern, about out-of-town interest group come in and somehow sneak into a charter amendment that in an election that's only voted on by 20% of City of Tiger voters. And that is a concern of mine. But on the other hand, the Oregonian has been enjoying this initiative process since 1902. So it's a long tradition of Oregonian who may feel like they are not empowered by the government, or the government is ignoring them. So the citizen has this power to unilaterally present this to their fellow citizen or voters to make a change. So I see both sides. But at the end of the day, if it were up to me, I would feel more comfortable if we, go refer our amendment process to something similar to our state constitution, which will, there's still simple majority, but for our state constitution, in order to be referred to the voter, it can only be done during general election unless approved by legislature, So for me, somewhat mirroring to the state constitution amendment process, where we said, you can amend the charter, which is city constitution, during maybe primary and general election, unless approved by the city council or something like that, and get rid of that 60% threshold. But that's my preference, but it's up to the rest of council member to see if that's what the way you want to go. But if we were to stick with the charter, the new charter as proposed right now, I think at the minimum we should do is at least insert the third bullet point saying raise the threshold for future charter change by initiative, just to let the voter be aware that this is a major change, and we don't want you to miss it. And I really don't know how the voter is going to react to it. So, but that's just my point. So thank you.
I want to, yes, City Attorney Rahala.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to make sure that we're on the same page as to what we're talking about. So the proposal currently in the charter reads, amendments to this charter proposed by initiative must be held at a primary or general election and must receive at least 60% approval of the popular vote. So there are those two clauses. So just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was writing some notes. I'm a Mueller, so it's going to take me a second to think about this. Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
So thank you, Council President Hu, and I think that I support the third bullet similar to Council President Hu, because I think it just lifts, there are other changes as well, and then City Attorney Rahala, I'm sure, will then address that in the 500 words she's allotted. So I am in support of this because I think it acknowledges a shift, and then it should be defined in the 500 words. So I appreciate the add and support that. So
I apologize. Do you support the add of the language, or do you support the add or the change that Council President Hu is proposing?
Just the proposed change as presented.
Okay, so the bullet add, not the change, the substantive change of what Council President Hu was talking about.
So I guess I was fine with this because I felt it would be further addressed. Oh, dang it, sorry y'all. I was fine with this because I think it addresses the change that would be further commented or explained in the 500 words. So I'm fine with this, but I'm flexible to whatever this wise group bubbles up. So thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, and thank you, Council President Hu, for the discussion, robust discussion. Having been on the Charter Committee, there was a lot of concern about outside interest coming in. It's been seen in other cities, and we wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen in Tigard. I'm fine with adding this bullet as listed as without Council President Hu's amendments and with clarity from City Attorney Rahala. I didn't think it initially needed to be in there, but I'm willing to go with the council if the will is to add the third bullet.
Youth Councillor Vogel.
Yeah, just kind of the same. Just looking to add that third bullet point for that level of communication between the voter and making sure that that is said with clarification. But yeah, I really like that idea.
Is anyone concerned? And I guess I asked the question of just, I think what Council President Hu brought up of just restricting access in any sort of way, or anyone feeling like maybe they're not able to make the change. I just want to make sure that this is, because I think this can be a very sensitive topic and that we've really fleshed it out. Okay. Council President Hu.
Yeah, I just want to add that even to amend our charter by initiative, you first have to collect signature from 15% of our registered voter in Tigard, and according to city attorney's really rough math, just disclaimer, it's about 6,000 signatures. So I think it's already pretty high threshold to collect 6,000 signatures, and on top of that, we still require 60% voter approval in a primary and a general election. It just seems like a lot of barrier to me. So, and I don't think the poll that we just conducted ever asked voter, are they okay with this high threshold? So I'm just concerned that, you know, for those voters who otherwise would support this charter amendment, new charter, they are fine with everything else, but when they look at this, especially at the very last minute, say, oh, wait a minute, you know, what's going on? It's not what I understand. This is not consistent with my understanding of initiative process. In Oregon and Tigard has this, is unique with this special high threshold. What's going on? I just don't know what, you know, if the voter will be willing to swallow that. So that's my concern.
City Attorney Rahala, do you, can you provide, because it sounds like the only other city in the state of Oregon that has this is the city of Gresham. So when did they put this in, and do you have any background on the general discussion or any arguments for or against what the general feeling was?
So I don't have any information on Gresham's. I can certainly look. We surveyed the top 30 charters in Oregon of the largest cities, and so there are many more than 30 cities in the state, and so I'm not sure that this is that Gresham is necessarily the only one, just the only one in the top 30 that we skimmed. So I can certainly get additional information. I'm not aware of recent charter amendments, so my guess would be that it was an older provision, but I can certainly look into that more.
Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Council President, who appreciate the comments. Having in the past former Lifetime campaigns, 6,000 out of 56,000 is not a high threshold. And so I would say, you know, to get 6,000 is definitely doable, particularly as the mayor mentioned, the city's growing. And so we probably are past 56,000 by now, I would think. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents to add to this conversation.
I will just say in general, I think the political climate is changing in this country, and I think even discussions we had earlier and discussions that we had last week over a controversial issue are certainly concerning. We're having trouble coming to a table, knowing that we disagree and having conversations about it, and all of the political tools are being weaponized. And so I certainly see concerns, and I think, it's on, if, you want to see my emails. I mean, I've been threatened with recall over the fact that we're having this safe lot discussion. Recall has been weaponized in King City based on a vote on their master plan. Recall is weaponized in North Plains because they are having a discussion over their urban growth boundary. I think all of these tools, and this is a really important conversation because, and that's why I'm sort of trying to flesh out and make sure we all understand that, on the opposite end of this, I think there's good intent. I think, those sorts of things, but I also think individuals can certainly weaponize something like this because of a single vote of a council that is they disagree with and they would want to change the charter for. So I also want to put that out there just as a discussion point because it's happening in real time in our neighboring communities. I'm not sure where to go from here. Is this something that we want to continue to find more information about for Gresham? Is this something where we feel comfortable with the change? Yep. City Attorney Rojala.
So using expert Google skills, Gresham's city charter was adopted in May of 1978. It was amended, it's been amended numerous times. The fourth amendment was in 1986, which is when the 60% threshold was added. It's been amended multiple times after that as well.
So it does not appear that 60% is a barrier to future amendments based on the one example that we have.
Correct. It's been amended 5 more times after 1986.
Okay. And so I guess I want to ask the question if we want to continue to think about this, if we feel comfortable with adding the proposed change, keeping the threshold, and moving forward. So that's my question. Do you want more time to think about it and more information, or are you comfortable moving forward as is with the proposed change? Yes, Councilor Shaw?
Given City Attorney Rojala's comments and the robust discussion we've had, I'm comfortable adding the proposed change and moving this forward.
Councilor Singh?
That sounds good to me.
Youth Councilor Vogel?
I agree. I think the conversation's been productive, and I look forward to moving this forward.
Councilor Wolf?
I agree.
Council President who?
Just to be clear, that this threshold will be higher than Gresham's threshold, and I appreciate the willingness to highlight the change with addition of the bullet. But substantively, I'm not sure I will vote for the referral to the voter just because of this higher threshold. So that's where I am right now.
I apologize. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly what the percentage is. What is the percentage change that we are looking for in our amendment?
The percentage change.
Or the percentage of popular vote to pass.
60%.
And 60. And is that the same as Gresham?
Yes, that's the same as Gresham. Gresham does not require a May or November primary or general election, so our provision would have 2 limitations, which to Council President Hu's point is more than Gresham's.
Okay. So you weren't talking about percentage, you were talking about the 2 specific requirements.
Yeah, we have extra step than the Gresham. Yeah, Gresham, you can have referral initiative anytime, any election. You just have to pass the 60%. But for this new proposed charter, in addition to 60%, you can only have the initiative voted on every other year, twice every other year. So this is a much higher standard. Well, higher standard. So.
More restrictions. Councilor Wolf.
But see, I would debate that it actually isn't more of a restriction. It ensures the opportunity or the likelihood that more voters will participate. As a school board member who runs in spring odd year elections, it's shockingly disappointing how many people do not vote in these out-of-sync elections. So I actually think it raises to say, if you're going to do this, we're going to put it to a broader set of voters who will participate. So I support.
I agree. That's why I will support if we restrict initiative voting for primary and general election. But I do not support a 60% threshold, because we assume that in primary and general election, the voter turnout will be already pretty high. So I would like to think that Tiger voter would make the right choice, but by putting this 60% threshold on top of that, already good turnout, I just don't know how I feel about that.
Can I counter your, just with something that I
Please.
Yes. I think that may be true for a general election. I would argue that a very different group of voters, but a larger number of voters are involved in the primary. I think the driver on participation for the primary is the presidential election in presidential years, and if it's contentious who's running. If you have an incumbent president, that party is not robustly participating necessarily in the primary where the other party might. And I think the primary historically, is driven more by that, where the general has a much wider population view of both sides of the issue, both sides of the spectrum, including the entire spectrum, coming to the table and having that vote. So I actually think, in a way, the primaries, especially having that 60%, means the people coming to the table really agree, even if it's skewed kind of who may be coming to the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's why I propose actually to mirror the Oregon Constitution amendment process, where you can only vote during general election. So I'm comfortable with that, saying amendment by initiative can only happen during a general election unless authorized by council. It's just a mirror of the Oregon Constitution amendment process. So that's the one I feel most comfortable with. But I'm the only person, so if the rest of you feel comfortable, that will have to be it. So thank you.
Well, it's really the first time that we're completely rewriting the City of Tigard's Constitution, our charter, our guiding documents, and it may feel like I'm dragging this on, but I think there's no more important conversation than the way our city is set up in the future. It has a huge impact, and I think it's important that we all understand, the community understands and knows that we're having this really robust conversation, even if it's in the minutia. Additional comments? Okay, so it feels like a majority of and I go back and forth. I need to think more about this, but I know that there are at least 3 individuals who are approve adding the proposed change of raising the threshold for future charter changes by initiative to the bulleted list and moving forward to next week. Do you feel like you have the very robust guidance you were looking for?
I do, thank you. So next week, you will have the changes that we agreed on incorporated, and you will have a resolution to adopt the ballot title and refer these measures to the ballot. So we'll have one more chance to revisit final language, make final tweaks next week, and then if council's ready to act, the resolutions will be ready to go, and we can refer it to the ballot next week. We also have time held tentatively the following week if you feel like additional conversation is necessary. So we'll be back next week for additional guidance.
Do all of you feel like you've learned a lot about city government? Again, I will give you a Tigard pin. I mean, it could be your bonus for sitting through all of this local government. The next item on our agenda is the fireworks discussion, and we also have City Attorney Rahala and Communications Manager Wyatt and Police Lieutenant Prater to present this item. Welcome, come on up.
Good evening again, Council. So you'll recall 2022, we adopted an ordinance that we thought was very clever and would address all the issues regarding fireworks and would have a ban, an emergency type ban on firework use and sale during a red flag condition. And we thought that that addressed fire concerns, weather concerns, and also gave the city the most flexibility. TVFNR was behind it, and we were very pleased with ourselves until last year when the red flag warning went into effect the morning of July 4th, and we had to scramble to implement this ordinance and figure out how to do it, and more importantly, how to communicate it to the community and then enforce it from there. It proved incredibly difficult and unworkable. So we regrouped with council later that month, late January of 23, and we agreed that we would not, that we would remove that provision from our ordinance, that we would eliminate the red flag trigger for firework use and sales. At that time, council asked for direction. The discussion was essentially that an all or nothing approach made the most sense, that either we ban use or sales or we regulated a lot less, that there was the middle ground that we had tried to find with the red flag warning was not workable. So at that time, council gave direction that we engage the community and see what the sentiment was regarding both a use ban and a sale ban. And so I will turn it over to Communications Director Wyatt to go over what our survey results were and what our engagements efforts were.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kent Wyatt, Communications Manager. First of all, I just want to start by thanking the community. So we did outreach on this topic from September to December of 2023, and we heard from nearly 2,000 folks in the community. And if we want to go to the next slide, we can start to talk about a little bit about the survey results. I also wanted to highlight a little bit of the demographic information. That's something that we've talked about on some of the surveys that we have out in the community to get a better pulse of who we're hearing from. So I'll highlight a couple of those, and then obviously the top line results, along with a couple of the reasons why folks tended to lean one way or another. So in terms of how we connected with people, in person, digital, both ways, we had a in-person presence at El Tigre, Tigers Farmers Market. Had surveys for folks at City Hall to take who stopped by. So we wanted to capture it that way, and then obviously our more traditional measurements, as we, on the digital side, social media, newsletters, folks we had corresponded with before on this issue. We also made sure that they knew about this opportunity. And then Tigard-Tualatin School District was also helpful in amplifying our messages, along with the both local newspapers. On the next slide, we'll start to see who we heard from. And if you've seen the survey, there's 5 or 6 demographic questions. I just pulled out a few that I thought were of interest for this council tonight. One dealing with home ownership, and then the last 2 bullets dealing with who we heard from and how folks identify themselves. So on the last bullet, in terms of language, 83% speaking English as a first language, but I found it encouraging. 7% spoke Spanish, and that other 10% were various other languages. Spanish is the one that rose to the top. It's this type of information that we'll use to start to tailor some of our future communications and outreach, now that we're starting to know who we're hearing from and maybe who we're not hearing from. The next slide addresses the issue of, so what's your opinion? But first, before you tell us that, do you live in Tigard? What's kind of your relationship to Tigard? That should be on the next, there we go. Which best describes you? So we captured about 73% of those 2,000 folks live in the city of Tigard. Another 14 visit, play in Tigard, and another 13 work in Tigard. So that's the breakdown. Of the 2,000 folks we heard from, we did clean up the data a little bit to avoid folks who may have taken it either accidentally multiple times. So the 2,000 number really comes from after going through the data and making sure that it was as clean as could be. The next slide, we'll start to see about what we heard from. You'll notice a recurring theme, the 5644. You'll see that in this. You see that in this slide, but you also see that in the next two. This one just asked, "Hey, has anybody in your household used fireworks during the year?" As you can see, 56% said no, 44% said yes. Then when we deal with the following question on the following slide, it gets at kind of the heart of the matter of what we're here for tonight. Should the city of Tigard ban the use of all fireworks? 56% said no, 44% said yes. To give you an idea, so we did the last question, there was kind of room to comment and expound on your answer. So I wanted to highlight a few themes that you would see if you went through all of those comments. A few that supported banning fireworks cited fire and safety concerns, particularly an increased fire danger, but also kind of the light of trying to do some work around climate action, how this fit into our strategy. The effect on veterans and individuals with PTSD, which I think we've heard about. Environmental considerations, such as some of the litter and pollution that may come from the use of fireworks. And then lastly, the noise, nuisance, and quality of life. So disruption to peace and tranquility in neighborhoods. Folks who are against the ban, a few themes that we saw in their comments. One, economic and fundraising impact, so the negative effect on community fundraising activities. Freedom and rights, folks viewed this, or some did, at least, viewing fireworks as a matter of personal freedom. Responsibility and safety, so advocating for the responsible use of fireworks. And then the last higher level theme was just some skepticism about effectiveness and implementation. Kind of a doubts on the ban's ability to enhance safety and whether that would happen. So those were comments that we heard from the folks that voted one way or another. The final slide that you'll see talks about the banning, whether folks should, whether the city should ban the sale of all fireworks within the city limits. Once again, 56 to 44, some common numbers that we're seeing there. So those were the really high-level results that we wanted to bring forward to you tonight, and the community input that we received here, received in the end of 2023. Certainly happy to answer any questions about the outreach methods or any of the results that we heard. Appreciate it.
So we've looked around at what our neighbors do. Portland is the only one that has a full ban, and Lieutenant Prater can talk in a minute about enforcement and how that would shape up in Tigard. We know that it was the highest call volume in Portland last year ever, so that in our outreach to Portland, it was not an effective instrument. So we have looked at Beaverton, Tualatin, Lake Oswego, looking at my list here. Lake Oswego is the only one that is close. The difference is that Lake Oswego has their own fire department, and so their trigger is during emergency fire conditions, which sounds very similar to the red flag warning, except theirs is determined by their own fire marshal. TVF&R, for political and legal reasons, will not make that determination in Tigard, which is one of the reasons that they were originally supportive of the red flag declaration by the National Weather Service. So Lake Oswego is close, but not identical, just because they have their own fire department. So I would like to turn it over to Lieutenant Prater to talk just a little bit about the enforcement issues, both what we ran into last year and thoughts moving forward with a potential ban.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name's Jared Prater. I'm a lieutenant with the police department. And I guess I just wanted to make a couple of points to enforcement of an all-out ban. Typically, the 4th of July is our busiest day of the year. And as we've been discussing, staffing's been an issue continually. We tend to get more calls on the 4th of July than we get any other day. And while we do have people that will come in and work overtime, we typically can't get officers to sign up for those shifts because obviously they want to spend time with their families. So what we'll typically do is we'll typically have nights come in a little bit early. We'll have our day shift officers handle the parades, the fireworks display down at the high school. And that typically leaves 4 to 5 officers to answer calls. And we still have to answer all of our normal calls as the fireworks calls are coming in. For example, last year, we did get a disturbance with a weapon call that basically wiped out everybody in patrol that was handling calls at the time. It's also pretty inequitable in the way that we can enforce the fireworks laws. The reason being is we can't get to all of them. And we can get to so few of them that enforcement is very tough. Also, enforcement is tough for the large retailers. So you've got the big box stores that are selling fireworks, and then you've got some of the stands from the nonprofit organizations that do it to raise money for their organizations. The big box retailers really didn't get the message, and they continued selling fireworks while the nonprofit stands were shut down. So again, an inequitable type of an enforcement situation. So that's really our challenges in the police department in trying to enforce an all-out ban.
Sorry, I'm writing notes.
Sorry. So the direction we're asking for tonight is, we discussed last July removing the red flag prohibition. Based on tonight, on the information you've heard, is there additional guidance regarding a ban or any additional amendments to that ordinance? And Mayor, while you're doing that, I did find my list. So the other cities that we looked at, Beaverton does not regulate. Hillsborough only prohibits fireworks in city parks. Tualatin adopts state statute. Forest Grove, West Lynn also adopt the state statute and prohibit just illegal fireworks.
Did we look at all across the state? I know on the Oregon Mayors Association group, we have an email thread that anyone can hit, and it hits the entire listserv. Earlier, within the last 6 months, a firework discussion actually came up, and I know that there are several cities around the state that do have fireworks bans. So did you also expand it at all to look wider, or were we just focused on our neighbors?
We just focused on our neighbors. I do know that Bend has a complete ban. Their reason, they have a much different fire situation than we do, so a little bit different community dynamics.
I believe there's also someone on the coast. I don't remember off the top of my head. I apologize.
That sounds familiar. I believe it's Cannon Beach.
So the question before us is the recommendation. Let's start with the recommendation to remove the red flag warning. I'll start with, is there any objections to that recommendation? No, I think it was well-intentioned and really confusing and terrible execution. We tried. So I think there is absolute support in removing the red flag warning from that. So I guess the question becomes additional direction. There's a couple of questions at hand. An all-out ban, not banning anything. So an all-out ban, I would say, bans the sale and use of fireworks. There is leaving as is, and potentially, I guess, making any changes in any other way. So I'd like to hear from everybody, just generally, how you're feeling about those sorts of things. I will start with the youth counselor.
Yeah, this is definitely a situation, a topic I was thinking about just from my point of view as somebody who is a part of a community where a holiday like that is so important, and then the point of view of a safety perspective. I think that after our discussion in July, it was eye-opening to see the safety perspective. I also think I'm a more cautious person personally, so I think I can see a little bit and resonate a little bit more with that. I think that realistically looking at an all-out ban is difficult with the information we were given, and I think that with that also is going to come a lot of backlash, which, in the long run, is that worth the safety precaution of it? I think that looking at ways we could improve it realistically, safety-wise, instead of possibly an all-out ban, but I'm not sure quite what that would look like, so I'd love to hear from everyone else and see kind of what they're thinking. But I definitely think it's one of those situations where personally I'm on that fence between what I feel like would be best for both sides. So
This is not an easy question. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for the presentation. It was really informative for me. Yeah, I think, after listening to the community survey and the police department's perspective, I think, and hearing what other cities are doing, I think following like state statute makes the most sense to me, and not banning fireworks at the city level.
Councillor Wolf. I'm piggybacking
You
back
did.
and
I was
forth,
not
mixing it
prepared
up
for
on
that.
you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh, and I agree with Councillor Singh. So appreciate you both on the feedback. And I found it interesting that 44%, it was like that flip, right? I don't do it, but everybody should have the right. And that really resonated with me. And especially the Portland example as well. It just seems we received some great data points that really support just continuing and allowing legal fireworks. And then I did appreciate, though, City Attorney Rahala, the conversation about Hillsborough banning it in parks. So is there an opportunity for community spaces that allow for people to gather, that maybe that would be something to consider? But that's the only piece I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So that's where I land. So thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Definitely agree with removing the red flag conditions of the previous ordinance. I was a little surprised to see that 50%, 56% said no and 44% said yes, and appreciate Police Lieutenant Prater your comments and understand it's very difficult to police, and also with the nonprofits that utilize that. What I'd like to see is, I think we are going to have more and more fires. Perhaps we can have a robust education campaign in the next couple of years, and I know we tried last year, and for right reasons, the campaign was there, but the timing was very short given the July 4th morning and window of the day. But I'd love to see us perhaps provide other opportunities for nonprofits to raise dollars in other ways that would be sensitive to veterans or the environment if there's additional warming that we're expecting. And as we know, Bend did outright banned fireworks because of the conditions down there that are very, very dry. So I think with that, I like the caveat of Councillor Wolf, what you had mentioned about public spaces. So I'd love to see a robust education campaign of why this is a difficult decision, why fireworks may not be the best for the city, working with our nonprofits to figure out other ways or opportunities to raise dollars and assist them to raise dollars. Thank you.
Council President Hu.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I think what I'm hearing, I agree with, and just a technical question for the city attorney. Do we, if our ordinance is silent, can our police department still enforce if people set off illegal firework?
Yes, so right now we have two provisions in our code. One is the temporary prohibitions during extreme fire danger, the red flag part. The other part is illegal fireworks prohibited. So this was also added at the same time back in 2022. The issue was there is enforcement allowed under state law, but it is so low on the prosecution interest scale that we added it to our municipal code as well, so that we also have the ability to issue a city citation for it. So at that time, council felt that it was important to really make it a meaningful citation to receive. So council set the presumptive fine of $1,000, not to exceed $1,500, which compared with other offenses in our code is very high. So yes, we currently do have the ability to enforce illegal fireworks, both under state statute and municipal code.
So are we considering removing city's penalty for illegal firework, or are we?
Well, that isn't a discussion topic, but it's I have it on my list of questions and comments that I think will shape the conversation I think you're trying to have.
Okay, yeah, because in light of Lieutenant's comment about inequitable enforcement, I'm thinking we should just remove the city fine altogether and just follow state regulations, state law, and just go with that. So that's my suggestion. So thank you.
Okay, so I will start on my list of questions, and then I have some questions and some statements, and then I think a couple of topics for us to discuss. So as far as the fireworks survey results, there's percentages for people who live in Tigard and don't live in Tigard and those sorts of things, and the information that presented, I think, included everybody. I'm interested in the information presented for the people who live in Tigard. It's not that I'm not concerned about the opinion of the people who live elsewhere, but I'm most concerned about the people who live in Tigard. Do you have those percentages for these questions?
I don't have that with me tonight, no.
Okay, I'd like a follow-up to have that, and I think in the future when we're having discussions like this and that question is asked, I'd like that information separated to understand individuals who want to comment on the city of Tigard and individuals who live in the city of Tigard. I think that's a really important distinction. I would say a couple of things that I brought up last year, the event at the high school, potentially using private security where we can to reduce the police load, so we don't have our officers, and I'm not saying they're standing around, but the at these events and who are able to work and respond to calls rather than, maybe directing traffic, which I think is not the highest priority on the highest call day. So again, I suggested that last year, but it probably got lost in the shuffle. I understand the argument about inequitable enforcement and concerns about that, but I think there's certainly inequitable enforcement in general. We don't catch every person who is breaking the law. We don't catch every person who is drunk driving and those sorts of things. And so I think using that as a decision-making lens for this is an unfair call when I could argue that about anything over the city. And sort of in response to Council President Hu, I actually would be supportive to not only keep the fine, but actually give it teeth. Because I asked last year, did we fine anybody? We know that there's illegal fireworks in Tigard. And one of the difficulties, I believe, is the officer needs to see the act in process. Well, by the time you get there, it's all done. And there is no actual, I don't want to call it punishment, but there is no actual accountability held for individuals in Tigard who clearly are using illegal fireworks, other than an officer who, the frequent flyers, we contact them beforehand, but to sit there and have the conversation and walk away. My argument would be to change and to be able to say evidence of illegal fireworks on the property and use of it, so pulling up, seeing illegal fireworks that clearly have scorched the ground, and to allow them to come before our judge to talk about it. But to me, it's absolutely worthless to have something out there that we don't enforce and can enforce and isn't an actual deterrent, when I think a lot of the complaints that we have are not people who have sparklers. I love sparklers. Nobody gets mad at me using a sparkler. Everybody gets mad at illegal fireworks, which are difficult to prosecute because of the requirement. So my argument is I want it stronger. I want our officers to be able to do something about that, and I want it to be an actual deterrent in our community, because people deserve to have peace and quiet and not be terrified in their homes for a wide variety of reasons, which are coming from the illegal fireworks that we can't enforce. I know that's a lot going on.
And Mayor, to your point, there wasn't one fine issued last year.
Or the year
for
before.
that reason. Correct.
Yeah. Council President who?
Thank you, Mayor, for that point. I thought the current city ordinances already lowered the burden of proof, right? So we want to lower the burden even more? I don't know if that's constitutional, or I don't know.
So Council, the way it's currently written is that a person commits this offense if the person authorizes or permits such conduct to occur on real property that they own or control. In non-legal terms, that is, if you are the property owner or renter, person who controls the property, that if there is illegal fireworks happening at that property, that person is subject to citation, even if the police don't actually witness the firework go off. The presence of illegal fireworks on that property makes the property owner liable. And then it continues that there's a rebuttable presumption that the owner or tenant has authorized the conduct if that person is present at the time. And so in other words, if I'm the property owner and there's illegal fireworks happening when I'm there at my house, there's a rebuttable presumption that I authorized that use, and I'm subject to punishment under that ordinance. So that's the way it currently exists.
So I don't know how we can lower that proof even more. It seems pretty easy to prove, right? Of hold somebody accountable.
Yes, so Lieutenant Prater can speak to this as well. This has largely been an educational tool and a warning for police officers. It was, I don't know if I would go as far as to say a policy decision, but it just hasn't, we've typically liked to rely on education first, and so it's not the language in the code that is preventing the enforcement.
So how can we change that so the ordinance is actually being enforced?
I would also invite the chief up, because I feel like maybe this is a chief level conversation and not a Lieutenant Prater conversation. And I certainly appreciate, and I think in most circumstances we agree as far as education and those sorts of things. This just to me feels much more of a black and white issue. So.
Yeah, what it really boils down to is a staffing challenge on that, especially on the 4th, on July 4th. It really boils down to our bandwidth. And to the mayor's point about, the possibility of having a security company assist with the event at Tigard High and Cook Park, that could increase our bandwidth to, be involved in activities throughout the city. It really is, I guess for lack of a better term, a whack-a-mole situation on that night. Our officers are running call to call to call to call, and there's probably 15 or 20 calls waiting for them when they finish each call. So it is a challenge for us to get to any of those calls, and we prioritize the life safety calls, and then property safety, and then illegal fireworks. So as you can imagine, often when we get to the illegal fireworks call, it's no longer occurring. And the officer has to have some level of proof that that was occurring at a property before we can do enforcement. We did do a lot of proactive education, as the city attorney mentioned last year. We had numerous locations that were brought to our attention by other community members, and we did go make contact, and several of them, I'm happy to say, it deterred their behavior, which is exactly what we're looking for. illegal fireworks are a huge challenge for most agencies around, at least in our general area. So to that point, it's a labor-intensive night for us in terms of staffing. We have a lot of people working, but in order to provide a safe event for the high school in Cook Park, we provide a significant amount of staffing to that, which limits our ability to be more proactive citywide. And we have canceled time off other than priority vacation during that time, and that helps us with staffing, but it still is it's our busiest day of the year. So that's where the challenge is. And in terms of enforcement, we're all about doing the enforcement part of it. It's just the question of, can we get there at the right time? To be able to provide something to the court that's actually something that matches the burden of proof that needs to be given. And you'll find that most police officers don't like just 51%. They like to know definitively that the person that they're citing is actually the one that was responsible for the offense. So that's where we end up in the education end of it. If they feel confident, but they don't feel confident enough to issue that citation.
Thank you for that very useful background. And I understand your point completely, Mayor. I really want lots of teeth, but given the situation we are in right now, I just don't know. If we give more teeth to our ordinances, are we making our police doing more work than they can handle? I don't want to put them in that situation, and it is hard. So I don't. So Beaverton has no regulation. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. So yeah. So
So I will say, based on previous conversations I had, I was under the assumption that an officer had to witness it in order to do it, and so I think that there is enough teeth there. But I think there's still 44% of our community who this is a deep problem for them, and I think we owe it to them to find a way to support our police department, to support the community who this is a terrifying experience for them. And what does that mean? Are we going to be perfect? No, we're absolutely not going to be perfect. We're not going to make sure that everything is taken care of. But I think we need to find more creative ways to hear our community who is concerned and is not having a good experience in their own homes because of whatever reason. And I know several of us have animals and children who it is a terrible night for us. Just to be up. So my hope is that we're looking at creative ways to support our department in enforcing the ordinance that we have and using it. Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, a robust discussion. And part of the previous council's guidance was really providing that education because it was a very high fine, and we didn't want to be a surprise to the community. And so a robust communication plan was in place. I think Communications Manager White, you've done a great job. I still think there needs to be more education out there. I wouldn't want to put the police in the situation that's the first time a community member is hearing this, though I think those who are doing illegal fireworks know that they are illegal and they shouldn't be doing them. So perhaps warnings. But I appreciate the fact that there is teeth, and I'd also say you probably know the community well enough to know there are probably a few who are egregious who do this year in and year out, and perhaps it's time for those individuals to receive the fine. So those are kind of just a perspective from the former council.
Councilor Singh?
Thank you. Yeah, I was interested. I don't know if we've talked to TVFNR about their perspective when they came in, but I think, did they say it was the busiest time of year too? Or?
They are very neutral on this topic. They will not advocate. They will not, they are very much like we will enforce whatever your decision is. They do not feel comfortable having any authority over this issue.
But as far as like their, response, are they strained like the police department too? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's also, I believe, their busiest day, I would assume.
Yeah, I would venture to guess it's one of them, if not the busiest day, yes.
Youth Councilor Vogel?
Yeah, I was just thinking, looking at this from kind of a youth perspective, I think going back to what Councilor Shaw said, like that education, that communication is kind of the foundation. What I know from the people around me in my community, I think a lot of times that's not super transparent, especially for the young people, even though they might not be the ones contributing, they might be, you know, playing a part in that. So I think that for sure, I think there is a lot of teeth to the pun, so that wasn't the word I want to use, but you get what I'm saying, to that. And I think that just that foundation of communication education is going to be really important, and that trickles down through the youth of the community.
We've had a robust discussion. Have we given enough guidance or landed anywhere?
And Mayor, if I may momentarily, I would like to say that the code as it is written with the provision for the enhanced fine for illegal fireworks, I believe is a very effective tool for this community. The reality is that the criminal, so it is actually a crime in Oregon to possess illegal fireworks, those that are not approved by the State Fire Marshal's office. The reality is the district attorney's ability to prosecute those is almost zero. So it was the intention when that was brought forward to the previous council was to give something to the city that could be more effective in trying to enforce the use of illegal fireworks. So our challenge, and we will accept that in the police department, is to be better at trying to enforce that, because we are hearing the fact that there are 44% of our community that is not happy with how it's going. That's a significant portion. So I would give you the commitment from the police department that we will do a better job of the education piece and the enforcement piece of that particular portion of the code. And I do believe it's effective. $1,000 is a significant fine, and as the city attorney said, it's much higher than anything else we have in our code. So it sends a pretty clear message to the community from the rest of the community how serious that is. So from the police department's view, I do feel that that's effective.
And please let us know how we can support you. I don't think this is a council who wants to make unreasonable requests or things that are so above and beyond. So again, that's where I'm trying to get creative to ensure, because it's a terrible feeling, right? Like it was terrible for, I forget the officer who had to tell everybody to pack up their thing. We don't want to put anybody in that position, but we also need to make sure that we're advocating for everybody. So please let us know what you need in order to be successful for this request that we're making.
Thank you, Mayor. I will.
Yeah, Council President Hu?
Yeah, I just want to follow up and say I really appreciate your candor, Chief, but I don't think the community members blaming the police department for not enforcing them now, because we all understand your resources is limited, right? You have to prioritize what's more important, life, death in a situation. So, and I appreciate your providing a context of, if we just follow state law, we need a state prosecutor or whatever, and it's probably at the lowest or low priority for them. So having city ordinances is really, in my opinion, now I understand it will be more effective. It's an effective tool, and so don't beat yourself over enforcement. But we support you, like the mayor says. So please let us know how we can help. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any additional question or comments? Do you feel like all of you have the robust discussion and guidance that you need on this issue?
Yes, thank you, Council. And I do, on our current ordinance, so it was adopted in May of 2022. And so to your recollection, Mayor, it was absolutely correct. Prior to that, it was essentially impossible to issue a citation because it required witnessing, and people who use illegal fireworks are smarter than to do it in front of a police officer. So that's only been recently that we added that rebuttable presumption about the property owner. So we are still, this was only the second year of actually having that in place, and so that is part of the educational component of it. So next steps are we'll bring forward an ordinance eliminating the red flag provision and keeping the remainder of our code, and we'll see how it goes this year.
It's like a fun guessing game.
Always.
Thank you, everyone, for this robust discussion. So we will move on to the agenda, which is agenda item 7, which we moved to the end, which is the 4th of July drone display. We're very much into the fireworks discussion today. And we have City Manager Reimer to give the staff report.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for moving this item to allow those other conversations to occur. Thanks for visiting us tonight as well as you leave. This item, as the Mayor said, is about our fireworks show and celebration that we typically have at Tigard High School. Is referenced a few times in terms of officers helping provide security and safety at that event as well. So as you know, historically the city has funded that event. We've provided the funds to a couple of our community members who have really volunteered to put on the fireworks as well as the event up at the high school. And so in that case, we spend in the neighborhood of $18,000 or so on fireworks, and then some additional $5,000 to $6,000 on the event itself. So just to give you some perspective as we get into the drone show. So why are we talking about this? So it was, I believe, June of last year, Mayor and I had a conversation. We'd both had witnessed these in the past, and so this is something that we should pursue. And we both thought it was something that would alleviate some of the issues that we've talked about even tonight in regards to our community members, pets, animals, and some of the effects that a large fireworks show that we're talking about now can also have on our community. And so we started down the path, if you may recall, just to kind of retrace our steps. Shortly thereafter in August, shared with all of you that the mayor and I had this conversation. We're going to start down the road of evaluating it, and we'll come back with some additional information. At that time, we had already, thanks to Joanne Bankston for her work, we'd already learned things about some of the basics of drones, meaning there'd be an increased cost. I mentioned the $18,000. At that point, we'd heard, anywhere $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 potentially for a drone show. Typically, a show is anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes in length. There are some sighting requirements and some of those early things that we learned. So we then pursued that, and the next step that we had is the mayor and I met with Ron Royce, who has been involved in this, and shared our thoughts as well with him to see what he thought. And I think there's an openness, I think I can use that word, but he, like us, believed that we needed additional information. And so thanks again to Joanne and to Rick, who was here tonight, and to Martin McKnight for their efforts in working with me on starting to talk with different drone vendors to really understand, what does this mean? What does it look like? And so we learned a great deal of things about these shows. One is, unlike a fireworks, so fireworks, if you think about it, if you have a sight line to the park or to the school where they're shot, so you could be on your own personal deck, somewhere in your neighborhood, you can see a fireworks show from a wide range of spots, and we experience that here in other communities where people find those spots. We learned in a drone show that to have really ideal seating, you need much different proximity, and you need different angles, because the drone show is facing one way. It's not bursting in the sky like a fireworks show. And so we learned that potentially spaces in Cook Park could work. More importantly, Tigard High School is really set up for having a drone show where there's space for setup, which is much smaller than a fireworks show, and there's really great seating in the stadium, as well as the fields, the grass fields that are between Cook Park and so we learned many of those things. We learned that having audio is very important, because as humans, that experience is elevated when we have the music playing as well as seeing the visual effects. And so we learned about that. And so all that said, we continued the process, and as we refined it, we learned that, roughly speaking, each drone that flies for that 10 to 12 minutes costs roughly $400 per hour, or per event. And so you can do the math that a show of X equals a certain dollar amount. And so the other things we learned is the minimum is around 100 drones or so, and there you get you still get a good show, but it's much more basic, because the technology, the numbers, it's harder to replicate logos and different images, but you can still get them. They just maybe won't be as vibrant and have some of the different abilities that they can at a higher level. We learned when you get to about the 200 level, there's more functionality, things that can be happening as they're programming it. And these shows can go up into the thousands, right? So you can just imagine that, but that's obviously cost prohibitive. But at 200, you can start to, you're doubling the number of drones compared to 100. You're also doubling the cost, to be open about that. So, but you're able to do much more, like I said, of the logos that you may have for, TTSD, if they're, there'd be a city logo, and then all the different images that we would select, as well as the audio that would come with it. That was shared with all of you in December, just saying, okay, we've learned this. This is now what we know. I was able to have some conversation with each of you, and so we continued the conversations with the drone companies. And one of the things that we also had to learn is when do you need to know by, right? It's the 4th of July. These are becoming more and more popular. We learned that by both. There's only, really a handful of companies, if that are providing these shows around the country and here in Oregon. And so it was really, by January would be great, but we can learn, in early February at the latest, so we can secure your spot. The same is true for Mr. Royce and Chamberlain, who are involved in it. They also need to place a fireworks order, which is on hold right now because they know you're potentially making a decision to either go with drones or not. And so a decision tonight is also helpful for that reason. So if they are to pursue fireworks still, they're able to get in with the vendor and secure those. Because the last thing we want is not to have a drone show and not to have a fireworks show. And so we're trying to make sure that a decision is helpful in that case. What we've recommended in this, if you want to pursue the drone show, we're recommending at the 200 level. But there's options, obviously, at 100, 150, or 200. And that's really to bring that vibrancy and quality to the show itself. As a funding source, we're recommending to use your transit lodging tax that is generated through our hotel stays. And we believe it's an appropriate use for this event as well. And kind of to summarize, timing is critical in this. There's many pros and cons to each. As each of the vendors we talked with, I think the first things that came out of their mouth is you're gonna have people in your community that are very happy you're making a decision like this, and people in your community that they may not be as pleased because the tradition of having fireworks is were already discussed in the previous item. And so all those things are taken into consideration, and what we're presenting tonight is that option, if you will, or options to move forward in this way. And then we'll take that and either move forward with the drone light show or continue with the fireworks show. In any event, I do want to thank my team. Again, I want to thank TTSD. They helped and sat down with us to really understand the logistics behind the show. How is it different than having a fireworks show? And the other piece on the drone show, there's less impact to Cook Park because we don't envision Cook Park being your premier seating sites anymore, and so it may open it up in different ways for our community to use it. And in addition to the police services that we talked about, I'm talking with our park maintenance teammates, Martin and Rick, we would just have to be redeploying our teammates, from one site to the other. Right now, there's certain activities we wouldn't have to do anymore at Cook Park, but we would, the team would probably help support efforts up at the high school. So those conclude my high-level remarks. I'm happy to get into more detail on any of the things I brought forward on the shows themselves of what I know, or the funding sources and other questions you may have. So Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And so, yeah, I saw a drone show at one of the conferences I went to, and it was a really cool experience, something that most of us just sat in awe because we had never seen something like that. And so I started the conversation because I was curious about what that might look like in Tigard, especially because this is something nobody in our region is doing, and it could be a really great opportunity to do it first. Lake Oswego does not have a fireworks show, they have a laser show. So we already have a neighbor who, and you snicker, I haven't seen it, so I don't know what a laser show looks like other than at like Disney World. But we do have other jurisdictions close to us who are looking at alternative options. I absolutely think there will be the people who think this is a really wonderful change, and there are going to be the people who have never been so angry at us before, because change is really, really hard, especially traditions like this going to an event event like this. I have some fiscal sort of questions that I want to ask of Mr. Kang, if he's available, or City Manager Reimer, if you're available to it. Understanding the transient lodging tax, what is the amount available in the bucket that we would have to work with? And then I know, so have we already in our current budget that we're in, because it happens on the 4th, I assume the money that we put in for this year is actually for the event that technically happens in the next year, fiscal year?
Correct. So, Mr. Kang's on. I'll try to answer some of them, but maybe we'll get all your questions first, and then we'll work our way back through.
Yeah. So my question is, again, how much is in the transient lodging tax bucket? And just a super high level, what can we use it for? I think would be really helpful, because it's a different kind of bucket than other things. And then understanding, we talk how much is allocated to them currently. And then if we're talking about the $80,000 in additional, the money that was already allocated, rather than purchasing fireworks, could that be then shifted perhaps to hire the additional security? Or is that money that we already have allocated going to reduce the $80,000 that's being requested? So just, I think, a really deep understanding of the dollars and cents would be really helpful.
Okay. Eric, if you're on as well and listening, I'll start, and if there's things you want to add to it, please don't hesitate to pop on the screen. So to start with the fund balance, or what's in the bucket, the fund balance for your TLT, we'll call it TLT if that's okay, fund, is about $1.2 million currently. Just to give you, I'm going to maybe add a few pieces of information here as well, just to give you a sense of what does the fund generate each year, how much do we spend. Over the last 5 years, and so take into consideration, this includes the pandemic and COVID time, when these funds are generated by the hotel tax, right? So that's what it is on the hotel stays. And so, but on average, over the last 5 fiscal years, we generate just under $600,000. For last fiscal year, just to put in perspective, when you don't have the pandemic, we were at about $740,000. On average, we spend $362,000 of that. So on the averages, about $227,000 we're generating more than we're spending each year. And so the fund balance continues to grow, if you will. Last year on the expense side was $191,000. So, almost twice or half of what was on average. So just to give you kind of a sense, it fluctuates every year. So we generate more than we spend every year on that. In terms of our grant program that we're talking about, so for those of you that aren't familiar, so we go through a process that's going on right now, seeking applications for our community events and social services grants. And so that process is happening now. Typically, we have funded the fireworks show through that with our TLT taxes. And it's just slightly increased every year, but let's just for sake to say that's roughly that $20,000. So when you're approving it, the process we're in coming up here, you're approving it for the July that's coming up, right? So July of 2024. So what's in our current budget has already been expended for the fiscal, from the previous July. And so as you look at how this works mechanically, if we went down the drone path, Mr. Royce would still put in his application for the community event part of it, and so say anywhere $6,000-8,000, right? The $18,000, there would not be a request for that, but then there'd be a request for the 80, if you will, so a net of $62,000 in that case. Because of the fund balance, I think we would have some space to work with our PD teammates and Mr. Rice to see what type of security, what companies would the police be comfortable with, what would be their role and responsibility, and what would be the expense. So I think to answer that question. So TLT is generated, as I mentioned, through our hotel uses, and it's really, it's the regional serving, it's bringing people into Tigard. And so the way we look at expending it, and there's going to be continued conversations at the subcommittee, is really looking at what events, like the fireworks show, like our Balloon Fest, that you bring people into the community, and ideally you're bringing people into the community to also utilize your hotels, right? And you're putting heads in beds, as they say. And so those are some of the factors that we're looking at, so large-scale community events like this. I see Mr. King popped on. My cue is if he wanted to add something, he would pop on. So maybe I'll turn it over to him, Mayor, if I can, to add some additional information, and then turn it back to you.
Thank you, City Manager Reimer. So I just wanted to respond to the question on the use of the transient lodging tax. The way the law is written for the transient lodging tax is that 30% of the revenues can be used for existing city services, and then the remainder of the TLT funds must be used on activities that draw in tourism from outside of this direct region. So the general rule of thumb that we've established is drawing in tourism from outside within a 55-mile radius. And it also can be commonly used for things like marketing material for drawing in tourism and supporting visitor centers. Those are just some examples. In other jurisdictions where they have regional sporting fields, that's another area of investments for these funds.
That's really helpful context. Thank you. And I think it helps set the conversation to have that information. Are there, does anybody have, I guess, questions before maybe we talk about opinions? Any specific? Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, City Manager Reimer. Question is, I know you mentioned as background information that TTSD, you've had conversations with them. Have they agreed to this use, or are we waiting to hear back from them? That's my first question.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that to this point of what they know, they've agreed to continue working with us on it. I think it was really helpful when the team got together a couple weeks ago in person and just talk through the pieces so there's a common understanding. Some of the concerns obviously are protection of their assets, right? And so explained how the drones would be set up, what the fields would be used for, gave us some of the conditions that they would want to make sure, and some of the different things that the event would be responsible for. And so if there's any expenses related to that, that would come through Mr. Royce's application to us. So overall, right now, I think from what they know and what we know, we see them as a partner in this from providing their facility.
Great. I know they've been terrific partners in the past. And I did see in going to a hybrid, and just a thought, I think it was Sky or one of the drone companies had the drones, which I wholeheartedly support because I've seen the show before and it's fantastic. But they had a very small firework display, and the intent was to show how minimal and small they could be and how magnificent the drones actually can be when you're watching an event such as that. So I was wondering, and again, it was just part of when I looked at their video and I looked at their marketing materials, they had that. Is that even a consideration or no, given obviously the location and so forth?
So we did not talk about the hybrid. We also learned, because I think part of our thinking was kind of multifold here. One was, what's the cost going to be for a drone show, right? To start there, we learned right away, even at the lower level of 100 drones, you're already almost double. And then also depending on what we're trying to accomplish, if one of the things is trying to accomplish not having the booms and the loud sounds for our community members as well as pets and animals that are affected by it. So for that reason, we didn't really look at it. But from what we've learned, obviously anything's possible. We'd have to go back to that. My comment on Cook Park not being as impacted would change because that's where we set up. Right, the fireworks, we'd also have to learn about the viewing and some of those things. So there'd be more detailed work that would have to be figured out to go down that path.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting a full blown, just that they had, and it looked small. It looked like 10 feet, like a little, fire, a bit of a, I don't know, you mentioned a little bit, sprinkle display. So again, it was just to show that, yes, you could have fireworks, but they're not as spectacular as a drone show. But anyway, so I wasn't thinking of full scale, setup or anything, but.
I think in this particular situation, so the difference is Currently now, the fireworks are set up and they're shot off from Cook Park, and the drones will actually be behind on TTSD property. So if we were to do both, it would take away the ability for us to use that part of Cook Park. But if it's like a 10-footer, people can't see it if they're in Cook Park when the main viewing is at the. So it's an interesting thing, and I didn't see it. I don't know for this particular situation if it would work, because I mean, I feel confident in saying TTSD will not allow us to do any sort of firework on their property.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And it's
so,
small.
I mean, that's just a guess.
Yeah, and you wouldn't need a stage or anything to set it up. They're literally like very small. And it was just on their video. Like literally, they had almost like a sparkler, but it was a slightly bigger sparkler, so it's not going to do any damage. But anyway, just a thought because they showed it. But I'm supportive of the drone, and I think at 200 drones absolutely makes sense. If we're going to be doing this, let's do it the right way.
Questions? Yeah, Councilor Wolf. Or I guess, I mean, if nobody has questions, please bring your opinions. It's a huge change for our community, so I want to make sure that we have yet another robust conversation.
Thank you, Mayor Lubin. Thank you for posing the questions on the tax. That's been on my mind a lot. So for a couple things, it's probably more comments than questions. City Manager Reimer, thank you for the videos, because they're really informative on what 100 looks like versus 200. So I absolutely support either we do 200 or go home, because otherwise we're looking at a bunch of stills in the air, and it just wasn't that fun, in my opinion. So I absolutely agree that it needs to be the 200. What I hope is, if this goes forward, there's a great way to collect data, because 80,000 for a 12-minute return, we better make sure that our community thought this was the greatest thing. And also, you know, and maybe I'm dreaming of the best data ever, who came in for it. You know, what was that movement into the city to participate and to just kind of understand the impact and then the feedback. Is there, you know, creative ways to do quick surveys on our phones? But I would love to understand the data that says, yes, this is a great direction that the city of Tigard is heading in, and let's support that going forward. And then my second piece is the advocacy around the dollars that we currently invest in our local community events. And that I certainly, as a counselor, as a budget committee member, as we hand out the events and social services, really be looking to how we're utilizing those dollars and ensuring that we're adequately supporting some of our local groups that have really connected and supported our communities in so many ways with the events that they hold. And I think that's it for me, so thank you.
I think understanding the TLT budget and the delta between what we're bringing in and spending, I think, is going to be a really helpful conversation going into the budget season, and understanding the requests that are put forward. Because I think many are pointing out that, you know, the high inflation is impacting them as well, and adjusting to change that. Youth Councilor Vogel.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, I mean, I've never seen one, so but I appreciated the videos. And I think that looking at kind of how people would react and the response, something that can really blow away their expectations, using 200 is going to get the best like response, especially for the continuity of using it in the following years. I think something I thought about was like the communication aspect of making sure people know what they're coming to. I know there's a lot of people that just show up and they, you know, this has been a tradition, this is what they expect, and this is going to be something new. So maybe not creating too much room for what's the word I'm looking for?
Disappointment?
Disappointment, there you go, yeah. Disappointment in the fact that they didn't quite get what they're looking for, but they're going to get something even better. So just that communication, I think, aspect of that would be really important. But other than that, I think it would be amazing, and I look forward to being there, so.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm totally for this. I think it sort of represents a new era for Tigard, and I'm for moving away from fireworks, and I do appreciate the survey, like doing an evaluation. I think that would be important too.
I immediately thought of a QR code. You know, just a little thing you can hand out, QR code on one side, please fill out to help us inform, you know, your experience. Yeah, sounds great. Council President Hu.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm in support of the drone, and I think if we are, as we were discussing, how illegal fireworks impact our community, and I think the city should lead by example by not creating those additional horror to my poor dog every 4th of July. And I think for environmental reason too, right? Fireworks create smokes and pollutants, and I think drones just one way to electrify our effort. So I totally support. I'm totally in support of the drone program. And in terms of numbers, yeah, I look at the difference between 200 and 150. 150 you get Statue of Liberty, and 200 you have Statue of Liberty plus simulated firework. So I think 200 is much better than 150. So yeah, so go big or go home, right? So yeah, so 200, let's go with it.
I feel like we're ending so energized and excited and ready to go. Do you feel like you have the guidance you need to comfortably enter into an agreement?
Yep, 200, let's do it.
There's a motion. Okay,
Yep.
apologies.
And, for a motion, then I do want to make a comment just about TLT for all of your sake, so I'll turn it back to you.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve the use of an innovative drone light show as part of Tigard's July 4th community celebration.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the youth counselor give an advisory vote?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. I just want to say, for those of us who have stuck with us the entire evening, there's a wide variety of community discussion that happened today, and I very much appreciate the differing viewpoints and the robust discussion, because I think it makes our community better, and all are welcome in this room, regardless of whether or not you agree with the council, to give your opinion. We listen to you, we take it into consideration, and even amongst the council, I think it's great when we don't all disagree and think of a different perspective and point of view. So I want to reiterate, everybody's opinion is welcome here, and again, within the guidelines of not hateful speech and all those sorts of things. I want to give that caveat. But thank you, Tigard. Thank you for engaging. And thank you to the council for engaging and bringing your honest best selves forward to represent for our community. So with that,
Mayor, just a couple follow-ups on the last item, just to kind of close the loop on a couple things. So what to expect for next week. So next week, we'll have a supplemental budget item in front of you that our budget manager and finance director have put together. And also, so this will be a good example. So tonight you're making a decision to move forward, and now we have to come back to you again to appropriate the funds. We're also going to be bringing forward, outside of the supplemental, a new process that we're going to be recommending to all of you in terms of being able to bring those two decisions together as one, rather than having kind of the batched approach that we've had in the past. So just a little update on that. And then on the TLT, one of the things that we're working on, we talked about, it's a revenue first philosophy for our budget. And so all of you, as well as the budget committee, will be experiencing a different style of our presentation this year, where we're focusing in on our revenues to start. And one of the areas that we know we're going to do more of a deep dive is TLT. So that's one piece of that, just to know as you move into the April months with us. Thank you for allowing me to share those, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for setting those expectations. I think it's really helpful. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Liu,
Yes.
Councilor Shaw,
Yes.
Councilor Singh,
Yes.
Councilor Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Good night, Tigard.